Hey folks, we'll go ahead and get started and dive into this webinar about leveraging the Student Insights dashboard at your institution or system of institutions. So just as a quick introduction, I'm Benjamin England. I'm a research associate that works with the Postsecondary Data Partnership, as well as some of the other things that we do. I really do appreciate you attending and being interested, of course, in the public sharing of your institutions or institutions' data. And also, I want to call out that what I'm going to show you today is reliant on, again, the feedback and suggestions that we have received from our institutions, third parties, and especially to about a dozen beta testers that we've had for the Student Insight dashboard that I'm going to show you. We had some really great feedback from them, and we definitely appreciate them taking some extra time to provide that feedback. For this webinar, we're also going to be talking about is not only what the Student Insights dashboard is and why we created them, but also how does your institution or system of institutions opt into providing your data on the Student Insight dashboard. So hopefully by the end of the webinar that you'll better understand really what the purpose of the Student Insights dashboard is, better understand how to make an informed decision about opting in to it in part or whole, and then how to actually do that as well and your options for doing so. Where I wanted to start really is the why. As you probably know, working in post-secondary institutions or in some related organization, there are multiple organizations and groups from state legislators to those potential college students and their parents and other third parties that really are promoting and advocating for the public sharing of institutional data. And this is certainly a great initiative and call for that all of these bodies and persons are doing. But it can also be something that is an extra cost, both in person power as well as just the platform itself, some kind of business intelligence tool, potentially having to pay for that. And so it really can create a burden on our institutions that we at PDP realize we can help and step into and alleviate some of that burden. So that is really the why we created the dashboard that I'm going to show you. So again, because this post-secondary data partnership is already receiving your data and has created KPIs based on that data to help represent it, we can certainly help with this requirement to try to alleviate some of the reporting burden or the cost burden or potentially both. And while doing so, we can make this actually part of the PDP package. So you already are familiar probably with what I'm going to be referring to as your secure dashboards throughout this talk. So your secure dashboards are those ones that you're logging into maybe on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and looking at your data, where it does actually require a login, hence me referring to them as secure dashboards. You also receive your AR files and that availability also to report and share data with third parties. So this would be an additional thing that you get alongside those things within the PDP package that you already subscribe to. And then again, we can help you meet potentially those reporting requirements and show policymakers kind of your commitment to institutional transparency, amongst other things, at your institution that may drive you to want to actually engage in the Student Insight dashboard. And the other thing is potentially in some way that we can actually help to show the metrics in a more standardized and uniform way. So if multiple institutions are using the Student Insight dashboard and we represent enrollment, for example, in the same way as another institution, people can look at those and understand these metrics and these KPIs in a more standardized way because they are housed and developed by one entity. So that's really the why we did this. And what I wanted to show you now really is what this actually is. And so you can understand where we pulled from that why and what we actually created. So to get to what those requests were, what we did was actually created a publicly focused version of 6 of the secure PDP dashboards. So not all of the dashboards that you actually have at your institution through PDP were eligible or thought of for actually being created the public version. We only did this for 6. So I wanted to unpack kind of each of these terms that I put towards what the Student Insights dashboard is, and then show you a little bit about it. First of all, what we did was take a streamlined approach to this. So because these are much more focused on the public or more geared to that, we did remove some of the quadrants and some of the filters. So we really focused on what would be the filters that really need to be remaining on these dashboards and what quadrants are really useful and provide information for these users. So again, they are focused on the interests of the public user. But ultimately, what we did by doing this is the data that they're going to see is quote unquote the same data you see. Again, I'm going to show you the differences that we actually created by this. But ultimately, what this allows for very much is if you're working with an outside organization who's looking potentially at this dashboard and looking at that data, you can understand the questions they may come to you better than potentially looking at different data. So I'll show you how that manifests in this streamlined approach. We also did the publicly focused aspect of this. It is not a password required, and you can link to the landing page I'm going to show you from your institution's page. We tried to approach this with more explanations actually being there, as well as simpler explanations that are maybe focused more on the public user persona than potentially an institutional research office or institutions personas. We tried to provide more definitions, simpler definitions, and more directions as well on each of the dashboards to really help the public user understand how to approach these dashboards. And like I said before, what we did was create 6 dashboards that are the public version of those secure dashboards. So we grouped this under 2 large categories. One is the early momentum insights. I will be using the acronym of EMI across some of these slides. That is the enrollment and the credit accumulation rate dashboard. And then we created 4 completion insights dashboards, which are the outcomes, transfer, retention persistence, and time to completion / credentials conferred dashboards. So again, only 6 of those dashboards that you may see again on a daily or weekly basis are created in the public version. So what I wanted to show you was really what the user could experience when they actually go to the Student Insights dashboard. This is the landing page of the Student Insights dashboard. I did run out of space on this slide, so I do want to acknowledge, like I said before, there are 6 of them. This is cut off at just the top 3. There are 3 other icons down at the bottom. So first of all, what I want to call out here is this is an Angular landing page, so a little bit different looking than the landing page for your secure dashboards, where we do have larger icons that the user can click at anywhere in this to actually get to the dashboard, as well as actually very clear and right away can be seen descriptions of each of those parts of the insights that they can actually get by looking at these. You can see this where you have something like the enrollment, and then under here would actually be a car, and then you have outcomes, retention, persistence, and the other 2 dashboards over here. Again, with descriptions of each of the dashboards before the user even clicks on it. We also have provided directions up here. There's help over here, as well as a link to our clearinghouse home. So what I wanted to show you from here is really the approach that we took to help create each of these metrics that you're going to be looking at, which is to show you what a demo version of each of these dashboards looks like with fake data that is very similar to what you may see when you see each of these dashboards, and then show you what we did for the public Student Insights dashboard version. So the first one I'm going to show you is the secure dashboard, the enrollment dashboard. So again, this is what your dashboard may look something like. Again, this is demo data that we are showing here. These are demo dashboards, but this is something like what you would actually see if you went into your enrollment dashboard. Quite a few filters, a little bit more visual, and presenting more data that you can actually analyze there. And what we did is, again, try to actually streamline this and make this more focused on the public user. And so, drum roll, this is actually what the Students Insights dashboard version looks like for enrollment. So as you can see up in the top left-hand corner, we have some basic definitions. As you know, the PDP dashboards are very cohort-based, so that is something that sometimes we don't think our public users will be as familiar with what really a cohort is. So across our dashboards, we try to include that explanation consistently. And then we also try to provide consistent explanations about certain aspects of each of those dashboards. As you can see over here, a little bit more focused on certain aspects of the data, not as much is actually put into there, and really focused on the public user. There, of course, is still the dashboard guide that we have done some editing to for the public user. There's also an info button over here that we also call out so that they can understand that. On the top, you can see that there are fewer filters here. Our public dashboards have between 5 and 7 filters. The secure dashboards are closer to about a dozen. So down here, you can see some of the functionality is similar as well. We kept some of the dimensions are actually in here. And let me just show you what that would look like when I actually potentially select something like the gender dimension, for example. This is just one example of the dimension I could select. I could also potentially select something like age group or race, ethnicity, or attendance and have a similar breakout on just this visual. So again, some of the analysis or information that the public would really want to have is still contained within these dashboards. So that's just a little bit about the enrollment version of that. But again, under the early momentum, we also have the credit accumulation rate. So again, this is the secure dashboard with demo data version of that. And this is what it would look like. Again, more filtering capabilities, 3 areas here where we visualize the data. And again, what we did on the public dashboard, again, is take that streamlined and publicly focused approach. And so we actually removed one of the quadrants from this to create a more streamlined and simple dashboard for our public users. You do see just a few more filters than you actually see on enrollment, but still less than you would actually see on your secure dashboard. Again, the dimension is maintained. But here again, what we're really doing is making sure to call out information that is pertinent to this dashboard, as well as just some general information like what I talked about, which is what is a cohort. So we're explaining what credit accumulation rate is, and that they can actually switch between those different thresholds, just like you can on your secure dashboard. So that 12, 24, and 15, 30 switch that you can actually do. So again, that idea of if a person potentially comes to you with questions about what they're seeing, you can see that same data on your secure dashboards and better understand it if need be. And again, they can potentially, in the public, do some kind of dimension breakout where they actually apply some kind of a dimension like gender. I'm going to consistently do through this presentation, but there are other dimensions there, and potentially look at gender broken out on credit accumulation rate. Now switching again to the other 4. So enrollment and CAR both fit under what we call the early momentum insights. The other 4 are going to be falling under the completion insights category. So outcomes is one of those. And this is, again, the secure version with demo data of the outcomes dashboard that you may be familiar with. So again, what we wanted to do here is the same approach, make it streamlined and more publicly focused. In this situation, we did remove a quadrant like the car dashboard. We removed an entire quadrant and made this more streamlined. We changed the visualization style actually slightly to make it more publicly friendly. We've added some more definitions here so you can actually see. Some people may not be familiar with actually what we would consider what is an outcome. We keep the same idea of what is a cohort. We explain this outcomes at filter with text below it. So really trying to support the users in their understanding and utilization of this dashboard. Similar idea, you actually have 7 filters here. So again, somewhere between about 5 to 7 filters were maintained between the secure and the student insights version. Again, what you can do is apply a dimension. I chose gender as the one to consistently do through this presentation. There are others, so I have again applied a dimension here, and it would actually apply to this visualization at the bottom as well. That is the outcomes dashboard. Again, that's a completion insights one. We also have the retention persistence. Again, this is the secure version of this using demo data. As you can see, 3 quadrants, quite a few filters to be able to be used. And what we did here for the student insights version is, again, we took away actually one of the quadrants, so really focused on that streamlined aspect of this, as well as try to keep it publicly focused and user-friendly for the public. So again, definitions on the left-hand side, including the cohort definition that we've consistently had, and then more about what is actually retention persistence. You do again see 7 filters across the top, and you do see this capability similar to the secure dashboard where you can go between retention and persistence. You can also again apply a gender, and it will break out retention by gender at this top. Just like before, there's still the dashboard guides and info buttons. So if the user still needs more support or information, they can actually go into those and look at that information. But we did try to provide it right away so they can see it. The third of the completion insights is the transfer dashboard. So and this is demo data of the secure version of what your dashboards would look like. In this situation, we did feel like a lot of actually what is visualized here is really important. And so we actually kept a lot of consistency between the secure dashboard and the student insight dashboard for transfer. So as you can see, there is quite a bit of that consistency. We did streamline it as much as possible. And we definitely did also keep in mind the idea of trying to make sure that it is publicly focused and the public user can actually kind of get acquainted with it through our definitions that we have here and explanations so they can understand how to utilize this dashboard. Again, you're going to have the total transfer out rate and then the transfer out with credential and then credential earned post transfer. So here again, I have applied the gender dimension, which will apply to these two visuals so that you can see exactly what it would look like if they did apply a gender dimension. There's other functionality on this one. It does have quite a few filters on here, as well as some parameters to actually do some other changes in the data. And then the final one is the time to credentials conferred dashboard. So again, this is what the secure dashboard would look like using demo data. 3 visualizations here, or 3 quadrants, as some people refer to it, where we're trying to represent the data. This quadrant down at the bottom, you can actually switch between 2 different types of charts, between average time to credential and average total credentials conferred. And so what we did here again is take that streamlined and public approach, and we actually said let's do this in 2 visualizations. The first one being average time to credential, and the second one being total credentials conferred. So again, we kept the explanations here. We tried to explain this a little bit more. As you probably know or may be aware, time to credential is one of the dashboards that's not a cohort-based dashboard. So actually in this situation, now we're explaining what an academic year is, because that's actually what the dashboard is based on. Instead of cohort, it's actually based on an academic year. So again, trying to help them understand what this dashboard is about and give them some basic information about this metric and how the data is actually represented in a more streamlined version. And then again, you can also do the dimension breakout over on this left-hand side. For consistency's sake, I've done the gender dimension breakout to show you how that would actually look in this dashboard. So again, this one is the 4th of the 4 completion insights dashboards. So wanted to show you really what the student insights dashboards are all about, but I also wanted to talk through the way in which you'll actually opt in to the student insights dashboard. I do want to say at the very end, I'm going to provide you some information where you can actually look at the student insights dashboard a little bit more before you actually make this decision to opt in to this. So just like I was talking about before, we did these 2 broad categories of early momentum insights and completion insights. There are 2 early momentum insights dashboards and 4 completion insights dashboards. That's the same functionality for how you can opt in to this. So what we've done is said you're able to opt into all 6 dashboards, which would include the early momentum and completion insights. But that also, if your institution wants to, they could just opt in to just the early momentum insights or just the completion insights. So you can do all 6 of them, just the 2 early momentum, or just the 4 completion insights. And I'll show you actually how that kind of works out in the portal. And what this is all going to be done through is actually our secure portal. I will say the dashboards themselves are publicly available. The secure portal for you to be able to opt into those dashboards is not available yet. We're just wrapping up some testing this week, but we wanted to make sure to kind of have this webinar and tell you about it so you can start understanding it a little bit more before it's fully released. So again, next week, the last week of June, is when you should be hearing about the release of this secure portal where you could potentially opt in if you would like to. I will say that some slides I'm going to go through will apply to some users, and to some other users, you'll have to hold on to some for some later slides. So the way the secure portal looks is going to be slightly different for a single institution versus a system of institutions. So I realize we have quite a swath of people attending today. So really, if you're from a single institution, you're going to be focusing on these next few slides, and I'll be switching over to a system of institutions and showing you what that would look like on the secure portal. So What you're going to be doing is once the website is actually publicly available and you'll be getting emails about that, you'll be able to log into the secure portal and it will look something like this when you log in initially. So typically it's going to have something like your university name or college name at the top and then information about that university or college is what you're going to actually land on right away. So it's going to be this general information tab is what it defaults to when you open this secure portal. What's going to be important is actually clicking over to this control access to your data tab to be able to actually opt in or out. So once you actually click on that, you'll see something that looks a little bit more like this. Most likely, you will actually see both of these boxes deselected because you haven't actually opted into anything just yet. As an example, this fake University of PDP has opted into early momentum insights, but has not opted into completion insights. So that's just what this example is trying to show. But again, most likely you're going to see both of these boxes looking more like the completion insights and blank. So right away, what you may notice is there's really nothing that is allowed just yet, and that's because you actually need to interact to be able to do some kind of save selection. So again, if I landed on this tab and it was like this, if I made any kind of changes, then I would actually be able to save selection. So again, before completion insights was not selected and save selection was grayed out, but as soon as I selected completion insights, save selection should become ungrayed in this kind of orange color and allow me to actually click on it. So once I actually click on save selection, then I will see on the bottom right hand corner, this actually has a circle that goes around, but kind of hard to get in a static picture, where it will actually say you have updated your PDP Student Insights data access preferences. So it's really trying to inform you that you can make this change and that a change has also been made. So once I clicked on this, this should pop up. The other thing just to point out is I could have potentially also made a different change, which is actually deselect early momentum insights. And then I would also do save my selection. This would become available. Once I actually click on that, then this would also again pop up. The circle would spin for a couple of seconds and that change would be applied. So the reason as to why I point this out is sometimes when we see those gray boxes or those boxes that are grayed out, we think maybe something is broken. It really is just saying some kind of action needs to occur, some kind of change needs to occur before you can actually save the selection for your institution. So really that is the functionality that an institution would encounter and what they would actually see on this. Now, if instead you're potentially part of a system of institutions, or what we refer to as an SOI, it would look very similar from the first actual where you would first initially land. So again, you would have these same two tabs where you'd have information, the name of your, this is again a fake system of institution, you'd have information about it, and you'd have these two tabs. Again, to be able to actually change the access to your data for the Student Insights dashboard, you would again click on this tab. Now, once you're here, you're actually going to see a longer screen than the screen I could capture here or show you before. And right now, what I'm just showing you is actually the top part of the screen. There's actually also a bottom part that I'm going to show you and talk about the functionality there. So for a system of institutions, there's two approaches that you can do. One is what's captured in this top part, which is making a change for all institutions within your system. So here, what's going to occur is I'm going to see a box like this. And if I actually click on this set or reset access, a box that looks like this will actually pop up. Again, here what you're actually doing again is doing this selection or this change for all institutions that sit within your system. So here I could potentially, again, just do early momentum, just completion, or I could select both of those boxes. If I select one or the other, I could then set or reset access. And a very similar box again would pop up in the bottom corner showing me that I have updated my preference for this now again for all institutions within my system. This may take just more than a couple of seconds, not very much, maybe 3 or 4, because again, you may be applying this change to a dozen or so institutions. So it may just take a second for everything to process, but it shouldn't really take more than just a couple of seconds for this to complete and occur. So that's one way that a system of institutions could potentially opt in or opt out of the Student Insight dashboard, is doing it across all of their institutions. But we also understand that there may be some institutions within a system that do want to participate and some that maybe want to participate in one option and some that don't want to participate. So we also built out that functionality to help do that. So here, again, you're seeing completely fake institution names, but this is basically what you would see, which is an institution per row with actually what has been selected for them or not selected for them. There are filtering functionalities and search functionalities here, so you don't have to scroll through all of them, where you can potentially just filter to one institution. Maybe you know it by name, maybe you know it by city, where you can actually go through and do that. So if, for example, I say I want to actually change the permissions just for this one institution, the App Dev Test School new branch, because they have decided they want to potentially now also be included in the early momentum insights, what I could potentially do is actually select this box right here that is currently blank. One thing I will say, while you're actually selecting or interacting with the permissions for one institution, the rest will go gray. This doesn't allow you to make any changes to any other institution until you have either saved that one change for that one institution or canceled it. So again, if I'm here and I've actually selected this box right here, as soon as I select this box, the rest of them will go gray, not allowing me to actually have any interaction with those boxes. And until I either hit save to save the change I've just made or cancel to cancel the change I've just made, they will remain gray. One of the things I do want to call out is the functionality is just going to be slightly different for this, is that when I actually hit save, instead of seeing that other box I was showing you before, what you're going to see is something that looks more like this, and it's actually going to pop up and show, again, the orange circle that's indicating that it is saving that change in preferences or permissions. Once you've actually completed that, it will go to something that looks a little bit more like the top screenshot, where you can actually, again, now interact with a different institution if you want to. For this functionality, though, you can only interact with one institution at a time. The rest will be locked out or grayed out while you're changing the permissions for that one institution. So there are some specifics that I definitely wanted to make sure I had some time to unpack at the very end of this. One important thing to acknowledge about how you can opt in or out of the Student Insights dashboard is this is not an instantaneous process. So for example, you went to the secure portal, let's say you opted your institution in or out, or potentially you're a system of institutions and you change the permissions for one institution. This is not going to be something that you're going to see instantaneously reflected in the actual Student Insights dashboard. This process can take about 1 to 2 hours to actually complete, where the data is added or removed if you decide to opt out. It can take about 1 to 2 hours to complete. After about that 2 hour mark, if something is potentially not working or there is a problem, please reach out to us. But again, please do make sure that you're waiting that time period, because it is something that we need to update those permissions and potentially add or remove the data based on those permissions. That's not completely instantaneous, but typically is about a 1 to 2 hour turnaround time for that. In addition to this, you also need to have the correct role for your institution or system of institutions. So the correct role to be able to actually opt in or out of this is actually what we have termed the data authorizer role. And some of you may actually already have that permissions and some of you may not. So I just wanted to show you if potentially you don't have the correct permissions, what I showed you before may look slightly different. And this can come in a couple of different ways. And I just wanted to show you so that you can understand, hey, if I encounter this, it may be because I don't have the correct permissions and that I may need to pursue getting the correct permissions if I do want to control access to my data. So the first thing is that potentially you actually go to this main web page that I was showing you that both systems and single institutions would get. And all you would potentially have at the very top is just the general information tab. This control access to your data tab may be entirely missing if you do not have the correct permissions or role at your institution or systems of institutions. So again, this tab, if that's missing, that's indicating to you that the permissions are not correct to allow you to actually opt in or out of this. The other thing that potentially you may see is actually you may have this tab, but when you go to select it, you'll actually see what we've created, which is a more view-only style and not functional or interactive way. So for a single institution, if you have those permissions that only allow you to view this, you would see something that actually looks a little bit more like this, where you would see whether something is enabled or disabled. So you may, for early momentum, this is indicating that those 2 dashboards should be available, but for completion insights, those 4 dashboards would not be available because it is disabled. Now, for a system of institutions, you would see something a little bit more like this if you had kind of that view-only access, which is all of those are potentially disabled for all institutions and all of those are enabled. Of course, you may see a mix here. There's other scenarios, but again, it would look something more like this, where you don't actually have check boxes that you can actually select or deselect to be able to make those changes. So again, if you encounter something like this and you think you should be able to control access to your data, it may be, again, because you actually don't have the correct role at your institution or system of institutions. And that's why you're encountering something that looks more like this and doesn't actually have any functional components to it. Another final note is that you can certainly look more at the Student Insights dashboard to understand it more. So currently it is linked from the Student Clearinghouse's main webpage. This is the studentclearinghouse.org. If you scroll about halfway down the page, you'll see a blue box that looks something like this: get better data, gain valuable insights, make smarter decisions. You can actually click on this and you can see the main landing page dashboard as well as the 6 visualizations built off of that. You can also potentially go to the Student Clearinghouse PDP specific website and scroll towards the bottom, and you'll see something that says Student Insights Dashboard, and you can learn more here. I will say that this second option has quite a bit of information about the dashboards themselves. It's not just the dashboards. It has a link to the dashboards, but it also has some information about the dashboards and opting into them. And then finally, we also have a course that is talking about the value of the PDP Student Insights dashboard, which can be found at our Academy courses page, which is going to be here. One thing I do want to call out, though, is as of right now, we really only have institutions that are our beta testers. So you may go there and you may only see a dozen or so institutions that have opted into that dashboard. Again, that is because those were just the testers that gave us some great feedback and really helped us develop this useful tool. So that is the limitation there. But importantly, I also want to call out one key functionality that we try to make sure is very clear on all of the dashboards, is that when you go to any of the dashboards, the enrollment, CAR, so on, the dashboard itself will actually be blank when you land on it initially. And that's because you do have to select an institution. So at the top of the screen, you will see these words, and we've tried to make this very clear to all users that you do have to select an institution to populate data, and that in this dropdown, you should select the institution that you're trying to see the data for. Again, this is not the only place that we've called this out. We've called this out in numerous other places to make sure that our users are aware that this is a functionality to actually render the dashboard, is to actually select the institution. So please do, if you are looking at those dashboards, don't think they are not working because they are blank. You just simply have to select an institution before data is actually pulled into the dashboard and shown. And then some very final wrap-up notes I do want to call out is look for emails. Make sure that PDP emails are not going to spam. In the next coming month or so, you may be receiving some emails from us promoting the identification of your user administrator and the data authorizer. Again, the data authorizer really is going to be the person who's going to be able to opt in or out of the Student Insights dashboard. We do realize some user administrators at institutions really aren't the individual who maybe is associated or involved with PDP on a day-to-day basis. So this is why we have this role. So definitely be aware of that we are going to be doing kind of a promotional campaign to help you identify that if you haven't already done so. That's going to be coming kind of later than the email below. The email below is going to be about the secure portal being released, with some basic information that we're going to be sending middle of next week. Again, this is pending final testing. That really should not be any issues, but this is the highly, highly likely day of June 28th. We should be sending out an email to our users to let you know that the secure portal has been released. I will let you know some of the screenshots that I did show here are ones that we have the functionality is captured that exists currently, but we're actually going to be adding some more functionality to the secure portal over the coming year. And so those tabs that I pointed out at the top of control access to your data may be alongside some other tabs in the coming year. So you'll start receiving emails about identifying your user administrator and data authorizers. Let me get to the questions. If there's a question that you come up with as soon as you leave this meeting, as it always happens, of course, please do reach out to PDP service and just let them know that you had potentially a question for me or about the Student Insights dashboard. Typically, if you put a flag in there like, hey, I have a question for Benjamin England, it gets routed rather quickly right to my inbox. So please do say, hey, I have a question for Benjamin England about the Student Insights dashboard, and I'd be more than happy to answer that. Is there a Student Insights dashboard option for third parties with multiple institutions in their portal? So really for the Students Insights dashboard, the control of the opting in or opting out is really to the institution and the data authorizer at those institutions. So really the functionality is focused on that as of right now that we would have on that secure portal. Hopefully that answers your question.
Is the Student Insights dashboard updated at the same time as the institution's regular dashboards are updated?
That's a really great question, actually. And yeah, so they are going to be updated in the same fashion. So when we aggregate your data and pull it into your secure dashboards, when we request that refresh, it's also going to concurrently create a refresh on the public version of those dashboards. Again, we really try to make kind of this sync between the two so that if you potentially are involved in this and you maybe have a question from someone in the public about what they're seeing in your data, you can look at your secure dashboards and understand it. So we made sure that they were really synced between those two. Again, if you do have any questions about this, please do reach out to PDP service. If there are ones that I can certainly help with that, please call my name out in that request. And do, like I said, look out for emails about the release of the secure portal. And then following that, more emails about identifying your data authorizer and user admin so that we can make sure people are able to opt into this if they want to. I certainly appreciate you all taking some time out of your day. Hopefully the weather is good wherever you are. I appreciate it so much.